Okay, so this story is about my grandma, Catherine Dozer, who died earlier this year after a long battle with a variety of different health issues, including dementia. Um, the story takes place about 8 years ago when the dementia was just at its very sort of beginning. And at the time, my grandparents were still living in the house that my grandpa built in SeaTac, Washington. And I was living in the U District, going to school at the University of Washington, but I would frequently go down to my grandparents' house to visit. And on this particular occasion, I had called ahead to let my grandpa know that I was coming by, and he had made it sound like that was fine. But when I arrived, the front door was locked, indicating to me that my grandpa was out. So I let myself in, and I walked into the dining room, and I sat down. And my grandma was a huge fan of trashy magazines, and so there was never a lack for things to read on the dining room table. And on this particular occasion, I had picked up a People magazine and just started to read it. And a few minutes after I started reading, my grandma sort of shuffled into the dining room and sat down next to me at the table. And she picked up a newspaper, and she started to read it. And after a few minutes, she looked up at me and she said, so, are you in school? And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I'm going to the University of Washington. And she goes, and what are you studying there? And I was like, I'm getting my BFA in metals, so jewelry design. And she was like, oh. So one day you might be famous. And I was like, yeah, I suppose it's possible one day I might be famous. She was like, And if you were famous, they might write about you in the newspaper? And I looked at her and I said, yeah, I guess if I'm famous, somebody might write about me in the newspaper. She was like, all right, well, if I was reading about you in the newspaper, what name might I be looking at? And I was like, Heidi, Grandma. Heidi, your granddaughter, it's me. Oh, of course, Heidi. How nice to have you here today. And with that, she just went back to reading her newspaper like nothing had happened between the two of us. And all I could think about is the whole situation from my grandma's point of view. She had woken up from a nap down in her bedroom, walked out into her dining room, where she found a complete stranger sitting at her dining room table. But judging by the fact that that stranger seemed fairly comfortable in her environment, Grandma probably knew that she knew me, sort of, maybe? But like, how was she going to figure out who I was without letting me know that she had no idea what I was doing there? And I wonder if it dawned on her as she was reading the newspaper, I can use the newspaper. maybe she'll be famous. Yeah. My grandma, she lived her whole life outsmarting everyone and making us feel good about ourselves. And this was a great example of how she made me feel good about myself while trying to outsmart me. I hope you enjoyed my story. Thanks.